Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. Just a quick reminder that I do giveaways every single week, so if you're interested and don't know how to enter, just stay tuned until later in the video and I'll tell you exactly how to enter. That being said, we have some malicious compliance stories and our first one of the day is by MakerOfCakes. You want to take my entire salary as a voluntary pension contribution? Okay then. This happened a very long time ago. 25 plus years and is theoretically still going on. I was happily working in a local office in my 20s when I was, out of the blue, headhunted by another company. The position was a promotion, more money, and I was to be trained to take over from the office manager when he retired. I took the job. It was horrible. The work was nothing like they had said. I was basically looking after a bunch of idiots who couldn't tell their butts from their elbows or be honest about their work timings. They lied on job sheets, didn't turn up for work, and I spent the entire time dealing with crisis after crisis. I had been there about 3 months and was looking for a way out when the manager suddenly announced the office was closing. Imagine quiet dances of joy on my part. No one else was happy though. I quietly asked the manager if he knew this was happening when they had offered me the job and he refused to answer. This was a very valuable lesson for my future because it made me realize that not everyone has your best interests at heart. A few days later, I got my monthly payslip and for the first and only time in my life, it had a negative value. I nearly had a heart attack. From my salary, they had taken not only emergency tax, which they didn't need to do because they had my correct forms and hadn't in the previous payslips, but also a large chunk for the company's pension scheme, which I didn't have to join because of my age. The HR department had decided I had to be older than I was because of the job I had. I was so upset. I hadn't signed up for this and asked for it back. The HR department basically told me to go do one and they wouldn't consider it. Even though their paperwork said that, at their discretion, they could cancel my voluntary pension contribution. There was nothing I could do. I was very smugly told that there wasn't anything in the scheme's rulebook to cover their taking money in these circumstances. I was spitting feathers when I had to pay them before I could leave. Admittedly, it was only a couple of pounds, but it was the principle. Now here is where the malicious compliance comes in. A few months later, to my surprise, the pension people rang me at my new place of work and asked where they could send me a check for my contributions to. I thought about it for a split second before saying, "No, I'm good. It can stay in your pension scheme." They were so shocked and kept insisting they should send me a check, and I just said, "No, keep it in the scheme. You wanted it, you got it." The reason I did this was because when I moaned to my dad about this, dear old dad had laughed and pointed out that the scheme would be sending me statements every year to tell me how much my contribution had increased and how much I would be getting and asking whether I had any questions. Wisely, or rather unwisely, he pointed out that this would cost a lot more than the amount I had paid in. So I left it there. They insisted it should come out of my salary so they can darn well invest it for me. Over the years, I have been contacted by them offering to pay me different amounts of money to settle it, and I have said no, I'm good, each time. When I got married, I dutifully filled out all the paperwork for a change of name and sent it off to them. This kicked off another round of let us settle with you and me saying no. In 3 years, I will be entitled to a lump sum of approximately £75 plus an annual pension of £17. I suspect that over the years, it's cost them a lot more to manage than that. Quite frankly, I may not claim it when the time comes, as that apparently would kick off a lot more paperwork, as they have to have a reason for people not to claim. Admittedly, looking back on this as I type it, it all seems so silly and pathetic, but it still brings a smile to my face when I think of the panic in the little man's voice when I told them my minuscule, to them, but entire salary to me, could stay in the scheme. He did try to force me to take the money, but as I pointed out to him, there wasn't a rule covering money taken in this situation. But there was a rule saying all contributions accepted by the scheme had to be processed. I applaud OP for this one because the fact that you went and worked there for that period of time and then they told you at the very end of it that you owe them money. The audacity of that. If this was you, would you also go to hugely petty methods to make sure this company pays as much as possible to maintain that money that they so willingly took from you? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by ZeroPenguinParty. The boss says it, so it must happen. Years and years ago, my father worked in a fairly large abattoir. It was the main source of employment in town and employed hundreds of locals. Everyone knew everyone, so when an outsider gets sent in to shake things up, you just know that trouble is going to ensue. Especially when my father, as the union leader, knew how to stir things up. Anyway, there had been an in-company competition which one of the workers had won a couple tickets to some sporting event. The competition had happened before the outsider came into the anatomies, but the prize was awarded after. Winners were even told that if the event was on a roster day for them, they would get that day and the following day off with pay. So it comes up to the week of the event. The employee happens to be chatting about the event to friends when the outsider overhears. The outsider turns around and says that the employee can't have the day off. Employee wants to know why. Outsider says it is because he didn't put in for time off. Employee says that he didn't have to, explains the competition and prize. Outsider says he doesn't care, the employee did not follow procedure so he can't go. The employee mentions it to my father, and my father hatches a plan. He goes through the policies and procedures manual and notes that all employees of the parent company, regardless of whether they are management or normal employees, had to adhere to certain food safety regulations, including attending a course. Failure to do so could warrant fines by the health department. Now, my father knew that every staff member at the abattoir was compliant, but he wasn't sure about the outsider. So he contacted a friend in the parent's company's HR department, and lo and behold, the outsider was not compliant. My father didn't mention anything to the outsider, but he did to the health department. For the next 3 months, the health department made surprise visits to the abattoir on about 7 occasions, and the abattoir passed with flying colors, except for the outsider. The parent company got a copy of each report from the health department, but the abattoir never did. But my father would get a heads up, so for 3 months the company was getting fined because of the outsider. The company bosses came to the abattoir for a meeting with the manager, outsider, my father, and a couple of other essential personnel. They covered everything, and then went into the fines. For someone who was so heavy on procedure and policies, the outsider had nothing to say. And then my father brought up the competition, and the outsider started to go on about policies. Company management had heard enough and promptly transferred the outsider to another division, and it gave the employee a bonus for not being able to use the prize. So to clarify for anybody that doesn't know, an abattoir is a slaughterhouse type place. That said, nobody likes the kind of person that comes into a situation, takes over and says, "Oh, you know that perk you were enjoying before I got here? Yeah, you can't do that anymore." Even though it probably doesn't harm anything in the place. Just kind of stomping all over any kind of enjoyment you can get out of it. I'm sure a lot of people were happy to see them go. Our next story is by What's It To Ya? Just make the price, but it says on the box. I work at a retail store that is a franchise. The owner is a piece of work. To give you an idea, they openly boast about all the nice things they have and all the vacations they took and aren't shy about how this business is a ploy to line their pockets further. They make us compete for our hours by our sales while paying a measly wage and being stingy with how much they let us work. Also refuses to work with your schedule if you have a second job. New hires usually don't stick around because they can't compete with the people who already work 30 hours and naturally have higher sales. The only reason I'm in the position I'm in is because everyone else who worked here quit at once 2 months into my employment because our boss can be so grating. Also, whatever they say is law. I got reprimanded when I started for cleaning the glass because we have a rule that's all work stops when there's customers in the store. But also got told to clean the glass while there were customers in the store so I wasn't just standing around. It's a lot to deal with sometimes, but I don't mind kissing butt until I find a better job, which I have. For a while, I was the only one that did the pricing. I liked it that way because I know I did it right. I scan the item, make sure the price is correct, and if it's not, I change the price in the computer so it rings up correctly and put a new label on it. One day after we hired like 4 new people, I noticed a bunch of price labels were weird. My boss likes prices that end in 0 or 5. For example, 30 or 75. There were prices ending in 2 and 7, and I knew that wasn't right, so I called the boss and tried to explain the situation. I guarantee they didn't even listen to my explanation because they told me like 3 times, "Just change it in the system to the price it says on the box. Whatever's on the box is right." I knew it wasn't, but I was told to make the items the price that was on their boxes. Our store has roughly 25 sections that each have around 30 to 70 items each. I got through 2.5 sections that shift. The next day, my boss is waiting for me with a folder. I got a 20-minute lecture on how to determine the price of an item and how to change it. When I told them I knew already and that I wasn't the ones that priced them incorrectly, they accused me of trying to push the blame for doing it wrong on someone else. What? Yeah, I kinda got the short end of the stick in the situation, but there was something deeply satisfying about knowing they had to go through and fix 150 items they instructed me to price wrong. It definitely sounded like a job that was doomed from the start, and considering this person is less than pleasant to work with and honestly just to be around in general, the fact that they had to go around and fix a whole bunch of stuff that they told you to do, that's pretty sweet, I gotta be honest. This next story is by chaoticridiculous. The person with the most points wins the reading competition? Okay. Now, as a child, I loved to read and was incredibly competitive. As some background, my school did those reading assessments that gave a score of your reading comprehension in the form of grades. Example of 2.34 being at a slightly higher than second grade level. When you finished a book, you could take a comprehension test just to prove you really read it and understood it and increase your score. Basically, a way for teachers to see how students were doing. Every test gave you a point score from 1 to 5 or something rating your comprehension. Anyways, in 4th grade, as an incentive to get the students to read more, our teacher made a competition along the lines of Race to Success or something. Every student was given a paper race car to represent them and a track along the top of the wall, and the first student to 100 points earned from taking those comprehension tests got a prize. Now, my competitive 4th grade self loved reading chapter books. I had a goal to read all of the Goosebumps series, all the Choose Your Own Adventures and Nancy Drew. Whatever sort of wild adventure I could get my hands on. I would read the book, take the test, and get my 4 to 5 points. Now, I was one of those kids who had stellar reading comprehension for my age, so I was reading bigger books than my classmates but getting the same amount of points from reading them. This is where the malicious compliance and my competitive nature kicked in. Even though I was constantly reading, I wasn't taking many comprehension tests, so my little race car was moving at a snail's pace. I realized that the books some of my peers were reading were much smaller and, in turn, much quicker to finish. I started reading the shortest books in the library, from reading comprehension books scored 8.0 plus to books scored 3.0 or less. They were worth the same amount of points but were smaller and less challenging to understand, which meant that my 4 to 5 points every 2 weeks or so went to 25 a week because I would read a handful of children's books during our library time twice a week and take the tests the same day, just racking up the points. But I flew too close to the sun and didn't work for the long con. A competition that was supposed to take more than half the year was about to end almost as soon as it started. My teacher realized what I was doing when my race car zoomed from about 12 points to 90 in a few weeks and had to change the rules from every book you read counts to every book at your reading comprehension level counts. It was a sad day when I had to see my race car brought to about 25 or so, adjusted for my reading comprehension. Everyone's got adjusted, but mine was the only one who ended up losing the majority of their points. Don't hate the player, hate the game. OP was just playing that Moneyball statistics game, maximizing the effectiveness of their campaign, and the teacher had to go and strike them down and nerf them. I myself commend OP for trying to do the statistically smart thing and dominate the competition. It kind of reminds me from my school days in around 5th grade or so. The previous year I had read all of the R.L. Stine books and they didn't have the comprehension tests for them yet. And then the next year they added them for every single book, so all of a sudden I had about 15 or 20 different tests that I could just fill out and finish right there, and I immediately jumped to like the top 3 after being next to 0. It was a fun little time. So quickly now, I want to explain just how to enter the giveaway. All you need to do is leave a comment on this video relevant to something you saw or heard or liked in any story in that video. That's it, you're entered. But it applies to every single video we upload this week. So to get the best odds at winning the $30 Amazon gift card giveaway, you'll want to leave a comment relating to any of those videos all week long. On Sunday, after the last video has gone out, I'll pick one comment at random and let you know on the following Monday who has won, and then it starts all over again. So make sure you leave a relevant comment on this video and additionally every video I upload this week for the absolute best chance to win. And while you're at it, why don't you go ahead and give the videos a like too, because it helps more than you could imagine. That said, our final story of the day is by Miles5239. Bloody kids and their fandangled contract dodginess. About 2 hours ago, I said to my 5-year-old daughter, if you hold your foot against the wall, I will give you 20 cents for every minute. As she has had a very tantrumy day and nothing I or my partner, her mom, have suggested has helped or alleviated the boggle of her day. My first port of call is to sit down with her and talk through her feelings and frustrations and what might help by emphasizing coping methods. But she was determined that the universe was against her and no matter what, she will feel the universe's wrath. Completely unable to reason with. I will not be winning Dad of the Year anytime soon. She asked me how long the foot would have to be against the wall to make $10, and I stated 50 minutes. I didn't think of the part though. About 3 minutes after we made the deal, she was sat contently watching Bluey, an awesome kids show that anyone with little kids should make a regimen in daily TV time. In Australia, but the ABC iView app should be freely downloaded internationally. And I didn't think much more of it. About nearly an hour ago, she asked me how long it had been, and I said about an hour, but that she didn't have her foot against the wall. Here is where she proved malicious compliance. She said, follow me, Daddy. I said, okay, thinking, what the freak can she show me that will make me pay? Overconfident dad moment. She points to her favorite stuffed animal, which is pushed against the wall, and says, Lambie has been there the whole time. She didn't mind at all. Me, thinking about our verbal agreement and realizing that she changed the wording and that I agreed, I still questioned her about it because of curiosity. I said, your foot, not Lambie's foot. The little bugger replied, but I said the foot. She then proceeded to give me a 20-minute synopsis of a 6-minute Bluey episode, which I admittedly needed that time to wrap my head around the probability that my 5-year-old is already a better contract solicitor than most that I've known, and I've known a few. I just gave her $20 because of the above, and also that she asked me to teach her how to play that game you play with the kings and queens and pawns. Chess. Her words, not mine. Yes, they are called pawns, but she's 5. She's so darn smart. Although it does kind of stink to give up the money, it is good to reward them for having that line of thinking. Now, I'm no expert or anything, but I think it would be a positive experience for them to realize there's a loophole type thing and kind of analyze it in a different light and apply that in their thinking and their actions as a creative way to solve a problem or a scenario regardless. I just think rewarding that line of thinking, that creative problem solving, is a good thing for a kid. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So if you have a favorite story of the day, let me know which one and why in the comment section down below. But besides that, if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving the video a like and subscribe if you haven't and turn notifications on so you'll never miss an upcoming video. No matter what you did, whether it was just watching the video or commenting, subscribing, whatever you do. Thank you all so very much for supporting me right here on the Storytime channel. Any single thing you do helps the channel grow that much more, and I appreciate the heck out of it. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and until next time, I'll be right here on the Storytime channel.